should have never have gotten that far, in my opinion. If you're the Oakland Raiders and you know what Khalil Mack is, and you know the type of friendship and leadership he had in that locker room, you keep him there. And here's the thing about the trade. Yeah, they get 2 first-round picks, but you don't know what those 2 first-round picks are going to be. The Bears actually might be decent the next 2 seasons. So those 2 first-round picks might not be very high first-round picks. And the chances are you're not going to get a Khalil Mack type of player in those 2 picks. And you look at the Raiders and how poorly they have drafted, it is similar to the Cleveland Browns. Jamarcus Russell, Darren McFadden, countless players that are just not on the team right now. Matter of fact, I think when I looked at it, I don't know how long it went back, but the Oakland Raiders, besides Amari Cooper, that's the only first-round pick that they still have on their team from the last 14 seasons, I believe. They have not drafted well. In 2014, they finally drafted well. You finally got a really good first-round player in Khalil Mack, and what do? You let him walk out the door? If you're any franchise, you don't let that happen. But if you're a franchise like the Oakland Raiders who do not have a good first-round drafting track record, you pay that man. And I don't know what John Gruden's going to be. You know, I like John Gruden, but I was one that believes that he was a little bit too overhyped because of his character. He won 1 Super Bowl. It was with Tampa Bay, and it was with mostly Tony Dungy's players. After that Super Bowl, he really fell off. And now you're bringing him into a time where the NFL has changed. Now, granted, yes, he has been around football. Being on Monday night, you know, we know how he watches film. It's not like he's been away from the game. But let's not forget, it's not like John Gruden was Bill Belichick when he left the league. Again, he won 1 Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. He made, I believe, 2 playoff appearances when he was back with the Oakland Raiders. 1 Super Bowl appearance with Rich Gannon. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 AFC Championship game appearance with Rich Gannon. But he wasn't Bill Belichickian. And I was actually surprised that the Raiders brought him back and that the Raiders paid him that much. Because personally, again, I love John Gruden, I love his character. I love who he is, but he's not Bill Belichick. When he was a head coach, he won 1 Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, and then he fell off there. And when he was in Oakland before, he went to the AFC Championship game, but other than that, didn't really do too much. So what makes you think he's going to turn that franchise around? Jack Del Rio, the year before, got that team to the postseason. Granted, last year was terrible, but let's not forget, they were dealing with a lot of injuries. And then the year before that, Derek Carr got injured and was a big reason that they didn't get past the first game in the playoffs. This team was going down a pretty good path before they decided to bring John Gruden back and pay him $100 million. And look, this is either going to play out really good for the Oakland Raiders, or people are going to look back on this and say that they made 2 of the dumbest moves in NFL history. By giving John Gruden a $100 million contract and by letting Khalil Mack walk out the door. But here's my bottom line. Regardless of how powerful your head coach is, if I'm a GM or an owner, I am not letting Khalil Mack walk out that door. I am not letting a 2-time Pro Bowler, a Defensive Player of the Year in his first 3 seasons of the league, walk out that door. I'm paying him the money. And that's what every other team does. If it's a great player, they don't let him walk out the door. The Lions paid Stafford. The Packers paid Rodgers. The Rams paid Aaron Donaldson. The Texans paid J.J. Watt. The Packers, a couple years ago, paid Clay Matthews. These franchises know those types of players are a gem. You just don't get them every other draft. It doesn't happen that way. And when you get one, you keep them as long as you can keep them. And again, we talk about the money with the Raiders, but when you look at it, they could have given what the Bears gave Khalil Mack. Now, they are coming out and saying we were nowhere close to what the Bears gave him. But when you look at it, the Raiders could be the Rams right now. Talented offensive players, pretty good defense, and that key defensive player. The Rams have it with Aaron Donaldson. The Raiders could have had it with Khalil Mack. And yes, I got asked this question when this trade happened, that if John Gruden was not the head coach, would Khalil Mack have gotten that contract? And I said yes, without a doubt. He would have gotten that contract. No question about it. And he should have. Plain and simple. And we can sit here and argue about, was it mutual or was it John Gruden saying, you know what, I don't want him here, get rid of him? Or was it a case of that front office saying, we're not paying that much for him? I'm leaning towards the latter. I think that John Gruden was the one that didn't end up not wanting him there. Why, I have no idea. Is it because of the contract dispute? Not coming to camp, not coming to practice, not participating, not meeting with John Gruden? And some people are making the argument that once the Raiders hired John Gruden, that Khalil Mack did not want to play for him. Every sign points to Khalil Mack wanted to be a Raider. And here's another thing you got to think about, is how does this affect locker room chemistry? We know that Derek Carr and Khalil Mack were really good friends. We know that the locker room was in shock when this trade went down. Absolutely in shock. As well as everybody else. But that's another thing you have to think about with this trade. Not just the loss of a franchise player, not just the loss of their best defensive player, arguably the best player on that team, period. But you also have to think about, how does this affect the locker room? And is this John Gruden and the Raiders sending a message of, look, we're not going to be too good this year, we're building something? Well, you had the pieces in place. You were a playoff team just a year ago. And again, if Derek Carr wouldn't have got hurt, who knows how far they would have ran in those playoffs. But you look at last season, they dealt with a lot of injuries. Amari Cooper wasn't healthy. Derek Carr was not 100%. They did not have a good running game. The thing that they did have was that defense and Khalil Mack, and you let that walk out the door. You just don't let that type of player walk out the door. The Bears got better. In 24 hours, the Bears got better. And the Bears are a big question mark because they do have some interesting pieces. But the question for them is going to be, how is Mitchell Trubisky and that offense going to look this season? Is he going to take that next step? Because when you look at the Raiders, okay, they got 2 first-round picks, but if the Bears are a decent team the next two seasons, those 2 first-round picks aren't going to be that good. The Bears, without a doubt, won this trade. I mean, just think about this. This would be similar to if the Rams just would have let Aaron Donaldson walk out the door. Or if the Packers would have said, you know what, Rodgers, we're not giving you that big contract. Go play somewhere else. We'll draft a quarterback. You don't let these type of guys walk out the door. You pay them. Because when it comes down to it, they are very rare. The Aaron Donaldsons, the Von Millers, the Khalil Macks, the Tom Bradys, the Aaron Rodgers, the Drew Brees, the Matt Staffords, they are rare. You just don't see it. And if you get one, you hold on to them. You don't let them walk out the door. The Raiders had the cap room to pay Khalil Mack. Like I said, the move to Vegas in 2 years, if it does happen, they would have made that money back easily. And the cap penalty they would have took from giving Khalil Mack this contract wouldn't have been that big of a hit. And the Rams have shown they're all in. They paid Aaron Donaldson the big money. They went out and got Jared Goff more weapons. They are saying, we're going all in here with what we have. Well, the Raiders kind of finally have that, and they let a key piece of that walk out the door. They let it walk out the door. You know, I got a lot of people who are saying that they believe that the Rams are going to be the best team in the NFC. I know some sports writers that are picking them and the Patriots for the Super Bowl. And most of them now don't even have the Raiders winning 8 games. And again, I said it when they signed him. John Gruden was not this Bill Belichickian type of head coach. I didn't understand the big pull of getting him to come back and giving him $100 million. Okay, he won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. And okay, when he was there before in Oakland and he had Rich Gannon, he had a couple of playoff seasons. But other than that, it wasn't like he was Tom Landry. It wasn't like he was Bill Belichick. He was an average head coach. It's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out for the Raiders, but right now, they're looking like a dysfunctional franchise. And what's sad is just 2 seasons ago, they looked like one of the up-and-coming teams. They looked like what the Rams do right now. That's what they looked like. And the Rams did the right thing. They went all in. They said, you know what? Pay Aaron Donaldson. Get Jared Goff more weapons. We're going all in. The Raiders didn't do that. They had the opportunity and they didn't do that. And I think they overreacted too much. You know, Jack Del Rio did a pretty damn decent job when he was there. He got them back to the playoffs, and if Derek Carr wouldn't have got hurt, they probably would have went farther in the playoffs. Last season, Derek Carr still wasn't 100%. Amari Cooper was dealing with injuries. You had no running game. And I think they overreacted too much on a lot of things. But one thing that they definitely should not have done is let Khalil Mack walk out that door. You do not let a player of Khalil Mack's caliber walk out your door. You pay the man. Plain and simple. Foles will start for the Eagles Thursday night, Week 1 versus the Falcons. Bell still not reporting for the Steelers. This is going to be interesting to see if he plays Week 1. And more than likely, this is going to be his last season in Pittsburgh. Whether he plays Week 1 or whenever he returns, everything is pointing to he's not going to be there next season. Darnold is named the Jets